Welcome everyone. I'm Monica Cronin, the curator of the Geoffrey Kaye Museum of Anaesthetic History. It's part of the Australian and New Zealand College of Anaesthetists, and welcome to the last of our April History of Medicine talks. I'm talking to you today from Naarm, Melbourne, on the stolen lands of the Woiwurrung Wurundjeri people. The museum stands across the Birrarung Yarra River on the traditional estate of the Yalukut Weelam clan of the Bunurong language group, lands and sovereignty never ceded. I pay respect to the elders, past and present, and extend that to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples from the many nations of this land known as Australia. I also acknowledge and pay respect to Ngā iwi Māori as the tangata whenua of Aotearoa. Tonight, we're joined by Paul and Imran from Auslan Services, who will be providing Auslan interpretation. We're also joined by my colleague Sarah, who will be helping me monitor the chat and Q&A function to make sure your questions reach our speaker. So chat in the chat section and questions in the Q&A section. And if my internet drops out, Sarah will take over. So you're in safe hands. Feel free to drop any questions as we go along, and we'll gather them for our Q&A session at the end. Please tag us in your tweets at GK Museum with the hashtag Djeembana Whakaora. And we ask that each word within the hashtag is capitalised, so reading assistance devices can pick them up and translate them properly. Tonight, we're going to listen to Clarke and Paris Norton talk about the work they've been doing on the museum's upcoming exhibition, Djeembana Whakaora First Nations Medicine, Health and Healing. I don't want to take up any more time really because you're here to listen to Kat and Paris, but I do want to give some context about the museum and the decision-making processes that led to this exhibition. The museum is part of the Australian and New Zealand College of Anaesthetists and has existed in one form or another since about 1935. It's been through a number of name changes, relocations and transformations in that time, and it really began its life as the personal collection of Dr. Geoffrey Kaye. He used it primarily as a teaching collection for medical students, and only much later it came to represent something more like what we generally understand when we think of a museum. For most of its existence, the museum has focused on technical innovation and the great men of medicine. It's presented chronological storytelling that seamlessly melded one great man's innovation with another's to show a distinct and lineal advancement in the specialty. Over the past few years, we've changed that focus and changed the format of lineal storytelling. And by doing this, we realised there are a lot of voices and perspectives missing from our work, both in terms of the research and the interpretation. Our usual mode of practice had rendered them invisible. We did some work to include more diverse voices, particularly women's voices, but couldn't shake the fact that everything we were doing, everyone we were representing was sitting comfortably within a European model of medicine and health. The only thing we could do to even begin to address that inadequacy was to literally hand over the museum to people better qualified and experienced to tell those stories. With a super vague exhibition brief, we were incredibly fortunate to attract the interest of two First Nations curators, Kat Clarke and Paris Norton. And that's enough from me now. And here's Kat and Paris, who will introduce themselves and tell you all about the exhibition.
Thank you, Mon. My name is Kat Clarke. I'm a Wachapalek woman from the Wimmera, which is Western Victoria. I'm a curator, an artist, as well as a student support at Federation University, and I'm currently living in Wadawurrung country, known as Ballarat. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and our future emerging generations, and I pay respects to all Indigenous and First Nations people who may be joining us tonight. And I also extend that out to my sister Paris as well for, and her deadliness as well.
Hello, kia ora, Yamagara. As you just heard, my name's Paris. Ne Gar Paris, Nala Walaba, Gunabaraban, Warrumbubumbu. I'm Paris Norton, and my country is Coonabarabran, the Warrumbungles, Milky Way meeting place in New South Wales. I belong to this country as it belongs to me, and I'm responsible for all beings, human and non-human, in both life and spirit, who continue to live here. I'm lucky enough to work on country. I'm a curator, artist and writer as well. Anything creative, I'm completely and utterly attracted and drawn to. I'd like to also pay my respects to my whakapapa, my whanua, who I honour them in the work that I do, as well as my Australian Indigenous side, and think of them as they sing to me from across the moana. I would like to also recognise all Indigenous people who may be listening in and joining us tonight, and also their families and their ancestors who they bring with them, and to everything that they do. I gather strength from this knowing of where I come from and who I am and who my people are, and I hope that I will be able to share that with you and encourage you to also join in your own knowing of who you are and where you're from, or your journey to reconnection. So this wonderful exhibition, I'm really excited to be talking about this with you. I'm really lucky to be working with Mon and Kat. They're both incredible at what they do. They have an intense interest and care for the topics that we explore in this exhibition, as well as all the communities involved. So a little bit of an overview in terms of Indigenous healing. Next slide, please, Mon. So health within Indigenous communities in Australia and New Zealand is understood as not only the care and management of the physical manifestations of illness, but the social, spiritual, emotional and ecological well-being of individuals and communities. These practices are diverse, complex and understood as holistic care, and are managed through generational transmission of knowledge to people, place and objects. Health systems such as these have been around for over 65,000 years in both Australia and New Zealand, and are to this day sustained by a knowing and a recognition of 5 pillars of health. We know these as mental, the physical, the spiritual, place and kinship, family. These pillars are understood and shared between not only First Nations countries here in Australia and New Zealand, but also all over the world. At first glance, the pillars that we discuss as a part of this exhibition can seem really simple, but their influence and meaning to people and community are really complex, as they're intertwined with protocol, law, practice, and spiritual belief. So to achieve what we would consider optimal health, these pillars all need to be equally balanced for all beings, whether that be human or non-human as well, in terms of animal and spiritual beings. So when we talk about the physical, we're talking about growth and development, our bodies as our homes and our shelters, and that includes our physical senses and how we engage in life and create life. The spiritual being our faith, our energy and our life force as people. This all defines us both as individuals and a collective. We all come from spirit. So that is a lot of the time where answers that we seek life. Place. It's where all things grow, is nurtured and dies. Place is considered to be country, and country is also to be considered larger than that, and that's about not only mountains and different landscapes like forests, deserts, that's also water included in that as well. So the ocean and rivers and waterholes. This is a really important one, because place is very sacred, it's alive, and it's considered a part of people's kin, which leads us into kinship, our family. It's belonging to care and share. This provides us with strength and personal foundations. It's how we begin to understand the world and how we interact or belong with it. And this, our kinship systems also link us to our ancestors, our past, present and future. So our last one is the mental communication, to think, feel and create. We are, I think, as human beings, all understand to feel, think, and communicate are really integral components of just functioning. So this is a really important one. And the mental is not only how we perceive and see the world, but also ourselves. And, you know, like many of these museums that, you know, we're representing and discussing, it's like our archive. So these pillars have really become the foundation of our exhibition and has informed all the engagement and collaboration projects that we've done associated with this in engaging people. And this has really helped for this exhibition to develop a really shared purpose. I might hand over to my sister Kat.
I'll get you to the next slide, Mon. So I guess our main priorities of this project is about the collaboration, the collaborative process, as well as our truth telling. But over the past few years, the museum has changed its focus, as Mon had saying, from a linear storytelling. And the usual mode of practice has been rendered mostly invisible for First Nations and many other cultures where medicine has been practiced within that particular community. So we've done some work where we've tried to include many diverse voices, as well as giving a chance for people who are more experienced, but also giving that agency in teaching and sharing the knowledge that they have when it comes to medicine and healing. Djeembana Whakaora is all about that. It's about the idea of knowledge transferring. It's also about collaboration and truth telling. Collaboration rather than consultation was important in allowing our participants to maintain agency and control of their cultural heritage, story, and practices, rather than speak for the creators or material as creators, which is often seen in many museums, as well as archives and collecting institutions. First Nation custodians and caretakers are at the foregrounds in this exhibition and are coming first in how we work and really speaking and leading and guiding us as curators. This approach not only allows for a more authentic communication and representation, but it also allows for the outcomes of this exhibition to weave their way back into communities and systems transmission associated with medicine and healing. Sorry, I'm just I'm reading from a mobile, so I do apologise. We are also honoured to bear witness to the cultivation of more knowledge through this exhibition and to share in their stories of transgenerational sacred knowledge between Elder, being the teacher and the healer, and our pupil, who is the youth and our children of the next generation. While this exhibition is aimed to represent as many modes of healing, medicinal practices and communities as possible, we also recognise that early on in this, that not everything could be achievable, but we do acknowledge and pay respects to those that may not also be represented in this. In recognition of this throughout the creation process and as part of the final exhibition and publication, we provide opportunity where identified and appropriate for participants to pay respects or honour the communities and connections. We also include a statement acknowledging, sorry, the slide just disappeared. Don't know what happened there. We also include a statement acknowledging all Indigenous people of Australia, Aotearoa, and the Pacific, and their ongoing connections to the maintenance of practices. Just a little quote that we've got there as well from one of our curators. If we could go to the next slide, Mon. And it's from Paris, I think is very important in how we see the exhibition as well. And when engaging our communities and working on an exhibition such as this, Paris has said, when engaging in any project that explores or foregrounds Indigenous voices, experiences, stories, beliefs, and practices, it is important to recognise the stories in which we come to share in our truth. Not just one person's truths, but thousands upon thousands of generations' truths, our truth. This truth throughout time has grown more complex with the trauma of our histories and ongoing experiences as Indigenous First Nations people. Therefore, making the maintaining of our culture identity, language, dance, practice, ceremony, and sacred places a credit to our systems of healings itself. And I'll hand that over to Paris now, and to talk more about our collaboration and our truth telling.
So I think it's really important in recognizing, thank you so much, Kat, for reading that and sharing it. It's really nice. I'm excited. I think it's important that we recognize, and we've had a lot of discussions about this as a group, you know, these effects of colonization on how we are developing and how visible these practices are in today's society. We, I know Kat has said before, which was really powerful, that, you know, these cultural healing practices and medicines have been silenced and overlooked and exploited for a long period of time. And, you know, more often than not, we see our traditional medicines and practices marketed and consumed as either theatre, a representation of the past, or repackaged, labelled and sold as someone else's new idea, their innovation, their sustainable practice. So we, in celebrating these practices as a part of this exhibition, we also recognise that there is another side to this experience, and that while we can engage in joy and celebrate success and ongoing practices, we also must recognise that you know, these things have happened and continue to happen, and it's okay to talk about it, and it is the only way that we can really move through this as a community and engage in a larger healing that involves everybody. So, you know, we really wanted to bring awareness to that science, that genius of our people, and being able to care for each other. And, you know, this exhibition can really cut pathways for people to safely travel and have conversations between each other, whether that's creators talking, different industries having conversations, medical professionals with knowledge holders. We think it's a great place to ask questions, be challenged, and ultimately be really positively and deeply affected by the ways in which the recognition and value of all things and the human experience, basically. Collaboration was fantastic in this. It's ongoing still now. We recognise that it has to be ongoing by recognising that these practices are living and a part of living land, people and families, that we must also engage in our work and the way we continue to represent this exhibition long after it is taken down as a living, moving object or human being as well.
And just to add in there, it's also about healing as a united people. I think it's also what Paris and I has found throughout the process is it's also for our contributors to feel that their safety is also considered and their health and well-being is also considered in this process, as some of our people, especially our elders, can get tired and exhausted. And what we need to understand is that respect that these knowledge holders held for us and are willing to share with us, for not all things can be shared. And so this exhibition is really a piece in that very old way of practicing, but bringing it within a new world where we are sitting today. And it's looking at it in a way that it provides a deeper listening for everybody involved, but also for any visitor that may come, and may need that bit of healing themselves. And it's also a footprint in a bigger movement in moving forward, of where you can see First Nations health being in the forefront.
Yeah, I think one of the, this whole experience has been really incredible, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But one thing that has really stood out to me is that, recognizing through this process in the way that we talk about healing, and as we mentioned earlier, about it being a part of a holistic system. And I think because of the organic nature of this, and allowing people to represent and communicate what they want out of this, as well as us coming to them with an idea, without anyone pushing or really seeing it till not long ago, with all the creators that are involved, we've actually created a full life cycle through these works. So you see the process of Indigenous communities, both here and in New Zealand, from birth till death and beyond into the afterlife. So we have stories about, children and the first 1,000 days of their lives. We share in the sacredness of the menstrual cycle and its health benefits to both men and women and country. We have stories of physical, aromatic and ingested medicines that process and help with physical and spiritual trauma. We have cloaks involved that bring you comfort and strength as you process illness and grief. Weave mats, vessels that represent thriving communities and the development of practices and the ongoing nature of them. We're definitely exploring the joy that people have been able to cultivate by staying connected and having access to their practices and this medicine. And, lastly, we discover the process of support and care that's given to people as they transition into the afterlife, and what it means to prepare people for a safe journey. And we talk about then from there, or everybody does in their own way, how they will return, and ready for that new cycle to begin. So that's been really, really beautiful to see that happen, and really affirming in that spiritual sense, our spiritual pillar, that this is a project that wants to be heard, and the people and practices who are, represented throughout this are speaking. So that's been really, really powerful, and I feel really honoured to be a part of it.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, I think something we were chatting about the other day as well was, where does this mean going forward? Kat was talking about, really a collaborative approach to medicine and health, and supporting people to have their own agency and how they want to be cared for and treated in terms of a medical world. And also discussions of this holistic approach. Where does it sit? Does it treat causes rather than symptoms? Is Indigenous medicine preventative? And, so it's really interesting all the ways that you can kind of go with this.
Yeah. But we'd like to thank you all for joining us today. And we do promise that we will get a physical, sorry, I just had a blank, a physical exhibition up. But we are also hoping to have it put within a publication, and we're also hoping to have it within a online platform as well for people. As well, we'd like to just take the time to thank you all for joining us, and please keep your questions coming in, and we'll be hopefully to be able to get back to you soon. I might hand it back to Mon.
Thank you. That was brilliant. One of the questions that's come through on the Q&A already is, where are the Indigenous voices? So I thought maybe one of the things I might get each of you to do, if you could, is talk about one particular contributor's story. So Paris, maybe kick off with you. So is there perhaps a story that particularly resonates with you, and perhaps if you could give us some background on the contributor and what they're contributing to the exhibition?
Yeah, sure. So an easy one for me to go to is to someone who I have a really deep connection with. Her name is Deb Munson. She's also a Gomeroi woman from Coonabarabran, but is now relocated. She is on the coast in New South Wales, North Coast. She is involved in this exhibition talking about her healing practices, as talking about ingested medicine, but also in terms of touch therapy. So her bit about her and her story is that these practices and knowledges were passed down to her through her grandmothers on both sides of her family, who were both Indigenous but of two different nations. Which is a perfect example of the connections that Indigenous people have despite nation group. So these healing practices are shared within both communities and understood. And you find that a lot throughout the whole country, and in particular, New South Wales. Deb has, throughout her life, engaged in things such as hairdressing and beauty as a way for her to try and channel these knowledges and these practices and these inner knowings that she's had, not being able to see how they fit in the world as it stands or as it stood when she was first really uncovering her relationship to the practices. These seem like the best ways for her to do her work and carry out her responsibility for her family and her community. So as she's grown older and her children have had grandchildren, she's really come into her own and is now running her own business, which develops products based on all her family's traditional medicine knowledge, and also runs sessions with community members and anyone really that book in time with her to work through any physical and mental traumas through touch therapy, aroma, etc. So her story is really incredible. I've witnessed myself her engaging with not only her own father, but my auntie, who recently passed away, and helping them transition and involving myself in that process. And, you know, that goes for a long period of time with my aunt for 2 weeks. And she was someone who was really incredibly strong and had her cultural connections. But during, you know, a long period over 12 years of being really unwell, hadn't had the time or the energy to really nurture those connections she had. And Deb was able to bring back those connections with her, to have faith in where she was going and bring physical relief to her pain for her to be able to enjoy her time with her family. And it was really incredible to see. I think that including Deb's story and the stories of those who she has affected and supported is really important, and shows that, you know, this care for people really does go beyond the physical, and our relationships to our communities transcend the physical, and ensuring that, you know, those connections are made, they're solidified, and, you know, because that gives people strength moving forward into the next step of their journey.
Yeah.
And Kat,
Thanks, Paris. Oh, yep. I guess there's a lot that we could recognise, but one of them that comes to mind is Leah and Jaya Morrison, who is a strong Yorta Yorta woman from Shepparton. She is a woman who is working with possum skin cloaks and taking them into the hospitals and being wrapped for cancer patients, to be wrapped in possum skin cloaks while they're going through their rehabilitation and their treatments. And it's something that has only just started to happen within the hospitals within here in Victoria. And she's working alongside Auntie Vicky Cousins, who is another Guna woman who is working with the possum skin cloaks and in healing, and what that represents as not only a period throughout birth, but it goes right through your life cycle through to the end of your journey and into your afterlife. And it's talking about how each pout is a layer of healing for you and is also a representation of your own journey throughout that healing. So she's someone that I'd like to lay mention to, as well as Amos Roach, who's someone who's a man of many practices, but he is very much a didgeridoo player. And he does a lot of men's healing. So he does it through sound and does sound healing and meditations. And how that works is being able to find yourself in a space within country where he goes out, and being one to where the music not only generates healing into that land and the space that he's in when he plays, but it's able to come back and be reciprocated back for him and healing him while he's playing. So there's the journey that he talks about in getting taught that knowledge as well, because it's stuff that's handed down through the men in particular. And he shares that the tools that he also uses when he does play that are very sacred and precious to him as well. So the things that are all enticed in a part of that healing and are important, but think not usually shared as often. But they are his musical tools and they go with him everywhere. And these are the things that he is always paying respects to as well.
Fabulous. Now, Paris, I do believe that you have a little snippet of Amos's Didgeridoo Meditation.
Yes.
So if the technology would allow it, I'd really love if you could share that for us.
Sure, I'll try and get it up.
Yeah. And
I can give a little bit of context. So we spent a day out at Garryword in Western Victoria, which is the Grampians. And we spent a day with Amos working throughout the sounds and playing sounds. We were there with myself, as well as sound engineer Dylan Clarke. And the two of us recorded and filmed Amos this day in getting his work and doing the practice that he had done. So this is a little bit of what Dylan and Amos had created.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're all right when you're ready.
In regards to representing, you know, who's also a part of this exhibition, a lot of the people who are involved as well are multicultural people. So if they are not, you know, Indigenous Australians connections to their own nations, language groups and community groups here, there's also connections to New Zealand as well. There's also people who are with deep connections to their Māori communities and whanua, but are living in Australia as well. So we've really also given opportunity to showcase that people have multiple connections, are often bilingual, and showing how, you know, when you're not on country as well, the examples of how to sustain and continue your connections. Because I think that is a big thing as well. As we've said, yeah,
Sorry,
countries
the Vic T Pacifica community as well, very much highlighted, as well as the Torres Strait.
I'm having troubles with it loading, sorry.
It's okay. In the meantime, if there are any questions, please pop them through to the Q&A.
Where are the questions?
it's the magic of technology. It worked before and now it doesn't.
I know. I was just thinking, of course.
We might move on and talk about a few other things that have come up in the exhibition itself. And you did just mention about the Pacifica community, and perhaps one or both of you would like to talk about some of the engagements with them and yeah, who's coming along and what they're doing and how that fits into the overall exhibition.
I'll let you go, Kat.
Sorry, I missed that.
Oh,
I've just cut out.
That's okay. Just perhaps if we could highlight some of the Pacifica contributions as well, that might be really good to hear what's going on there.
Yeah, Leah Paapa is a sorry, Mon, I can't pronounce her actual background. Can you?
I've only got Samoan and Native American, but I can't.
Native American, that's the other one. Yes, I couldn't remember as well. So she's, yeah, Samoan and Native American lady. She's bringing is it 1,000 days, 100 days? 1,000 days. Yes, so we're getting 1,000 days of the process of the journey between mother and child, from the moment that mother is carrying child to the moment child is born, and a bit after that. And basically what we are exploring with Leah is not only the workshops in which she delivers and what goes in process with the cultural practices there of the women, but it's also about what is done to make certain things for the children and while you're with the child. So they're like gifts and things that they give their child as well. And then there's also, on top of that, sorry, I've got a blank. There's also the traditional rattles, baby rattles that Leah makes as well for that, which we're also hoping to partner with a woven baby bassinet. So this is a collaboration also of not only just Samoan, but it's also Aboriginal. So the two of them are collaborating together, and we'll show that sort of piece being spoken to. Another area of where we're doing is, again, within dance. So Phil Egan is a renowned Aboriginal man, but he's also a Tongan man, and he runs his own dance troupe, and they are a young group that are in line as well. So we're having representation of men's and women's dancing from both cultures as well. And we're having a representation of the collaborative men and dancing. But then we also have representation of modern contemporary. So seeing how the traditional is being brought in, which is what Phil's bringing in, and showing a bit of Aboriginal and Tongan dance within the two, as well as a little bit of contemporary dance that you see within today's, popular scenes, I guess. But that's a mixture of a few, contributors. We've also got a healer, a few healers, sorry, not just a healer. We've got a couple of healers who have come forward in sharing their own herbal knowledge, but also to discuss what can be shared and what is accessible and not accessible, depending on the landmass and the area of where they're coming from. So there's a bit of that transferring of knowledge and sharing there. We've also got representatives who are contributors as writers and academics who are contributing on top of that to our publication. So they're actually Vic Pacifica representation within the community, and who can't exactly, like Paris was saying, can't exactly go home country, but still practice their culture very strongly here within Australia, and still are a part of respecting the ancestry while abroad here in Australia. We've also got stories from community, so just talking community, that are people that are everyday people who probably don't usually get the chance to share their story, but they're coming forward. This collaboration is something that's been itself a flow of, we're not going out and saying, hey, do you want to be a part of this? Word just spreads along the grapevine, as blackfellas do, and other communities do, as community people of colour in general. We have our own little networks, and we share across those networks, and word gets around. And so we've had people contact us and reach out from all walks of life, from across the nation and across the seas in New Zealand, and even across to Tasmania. And we're working with them from backgrounds, creative backgrounds, as photographers, who may be lawyers, academics, traditional healers, but they're also by day, regular working people, regular jobs, 9-to-5 jobs. And then you've also got people who are, travelers and not really no fixed address. So it's about timing, and that collaboration is important in working with our contributors, and they're the ones that are coming to us, and we're not forcing it. It's just one of those things that is intrinsic and flowing naturally and coming together the way it's supposed to. These things happen for a reason. And so we've got the right people coming into the exhibition, and they're the ones that are here to tell their stories and to share. And our public programs as well will be a representation of that. We're hoping to have dance, we're hoping to have traditional tattooing, we're hoping to have, storytelling sessions and outer conversations, and things that are really important in healing community. And with COVID that's been happening at this time, I think it's needed in the community, and I think the wider population is ready to move forward with First Nations medicine and healing.
Excellent. Believe it or not, that might just be about where we get to leave it. Although I do have to say, Kiri Rikahana has been saying hello to you. Hi, Kiri. Thank you so much. Really looking forward to seeing how this all shapes up. So just to recap, there's a physical exhibition, there'll be an online exhibition, there'll be a publication, and there'll be public programming to come as well. Have I missed anything?
No, that's it.
And just want to say apologies to all my New Zealand and Vic Pacifica, brothers and sisters, for my pronunciations. I am getting better at that, and I promise I will get better. I will. I'm learning it. I'm learning even my own language is hard, learning, but I'm getting better as a young fella coming up. I'm getting better.
I'm only speaking out of half my mouth, so I don't know how my pronunciation is either. So it's fine. But thank you so much. Any luck with that little teaser from Amos?
No, I can just give it one more.
We'll give it one more go.
I can do that. I shut a few things down. I'm a chronic tab opener, so it's probably of my own doing. Sorry, let's see one moment.
Just think it would be the perfect little note to go out on.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
You're muted, Mon.
Always happens to someone. That Amos is going to give us a full 30 minutes of didgeridoo drone meditation. The idea behind it will be to lie on the floor, and whether it's through earphones or whether it's through a speaker system, is to actually let the sound travel through your body. So that's going to be a really exciting addition to the exhibition, I think. And yeah, so thank you everyone for coming. Yeah, I feel like 30 minutes of that is going to potentially heal the whole world too, Chris.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for your kind words. Appreciate you bringing good energy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And keep up to date on Twitter, on our blog, and Instagram, and whether it's via the Anchor apps as well. And we'll be kept up to date with launch dates and all of that sort of thing. So thank you everybody for coming, and good night.
Yalu.
Nakin.